Coming up on this week's podcast, can McLaren keep its drivers under control in the F1 title fight? When did Max Verstappen and Red Bull's season truly start to unravel? Does George Russell now have all the power? And what have been the biggest moments of the season so far? It's time for the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. And welcome to the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast, looking back on the first half of the Formula One season. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by the dynamic duo. That is 2023 Young Journalist of the Year, Sam, absolutely, Coop, and the man, the myth, the almighty legend with another travel struggle story. It is none other than lead editor Ian Parks. And yes, we're getting straight onto that with our brand new segment for the podcast. It is Ian Parks' Travel Struggles. Ian, can you please explain what happened in Budapest?
So I took some people are going to think this is the unusual decision of going via another airport to get from the UK across to Budapest. But given where I live in the UK, which is nowhere near London, a long, long way from London, can I just say, folks, I decided to go from one of my two closest airports, go via somewhere, because for me, it just saves driving all the way down the M1 to London. It's just a bit of a ball ache sometimes, particularly when I do it a lot during the season when it gets to mid and long haul Grand Prix. So coming back, I was flying out of Budapest via Zurich. There was enough connection time between the two flights. However, the flight out of Budapest was delayed by an hour by the time we eventually took off. It meant that when I landed in Zurich, I had 15 minutes to get to my next flight. So thankfully, I was towards the front of the plane, which meant I was able to disembark quite quickly. But nevertheless, bearing in mind the UK is no longer in the EU, we still had to go through passport control to get to my flight. Whereas some people that were coming out of Budapest and going on to Bologna, they were being picked up on the apron just outside the plane and going straight from that plane onto their flight to Bologna. They didn't have to go through passport control because they're part of Europe. Us being in the UK, we're a bit different. Nevertheless, thankfully, Zurich Airport was quiet, flew through passport control. Sorry, excuse me. Unlike 1 week previously, where it would taken me an hour and a half to get through passport control at Brussels Airport. And because there was so many other people that were also on delayed flights coming into Zurich, it meant that my flight was delayed to allow all those passengers to get on board. Otherwise, just as previously, it got to the point where I'm thinking I'm going to be spending a night elsewhere rather than in my own bed. Thankfully, all just turned out okay. Tune in next time, folks, to see what happens when I travel in and out of Italy for the Italian Grand Prix. Just in case you're wondering, I'm not doing the Dutch Grand Prix. I'm at home for that one. So, yeah,
I feel we need to start a new segment, or like the fans guessing and us guessing as well, Sam, because we never know where Ian's going to connect via. Because honestly, it's fabulous stories. I absolutely love it. Sam, how are you, my friend? And also, what do we call this part of the season? Because I know my intro said first half, but technically we're actually over the first half. We've had 14 rounds, 10 to go. So we can't really call it mid-season because we're not at the halfway point. We can't call it the first half because the first half's done. What do we name it? 60%?
So Ian gets a fun story. I get maths.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Do you have a fun story for us? Go ahead.
Not off the top of my head.
Your food shopping just arrived this morning. Maybe there's something interesting in that.
Yes, my food shop. Won't mention the supermarket because other supermarkets are available. Was meant to arrive before 7 o'clock this morning, which is when I started work. But it was late, so I had to basically receive all my shopping whilst on the phone to Ian this morning. Which,
right, moving swiftly on, yes.
Yeah,
okay,
moving
come on.
Swiftly
isn't very interesting, to be fair. I would still call it half. I would argue that if you're being really kind of lax, you could say it's not, but you could say it's two unequal halves that make a whole.
What
is my, we can be more fluid with it. But yeah, I still first part of the season.
Okay. I just call it F1 summer break period.
F1
it's
summer
just the
break.
summer.
Okay. For the sake of this podcast,
shut
then
down the break.
I'll call it the summer break
shutdown,
episode or the mid-season episode, just to, for our sake, basically.
Yeah,
but anyways,
mid's fine.
moving swiftly on with our fun question for this week's episode.
Ooh, hopefully I'll
Here
do
we
better
go.
than last week's fun question, because that was terrible.
Right, are you ready? 3 drivers have failed to make Q3 in 2025. Can you name them? 3 drivers have not made a single appearance in Q3 this year. Who are they?
Jack Doohan, Franco Colapinto, and...
I'm just going to let Sam continue.
Well, it's the other one that's the difficult one. No offense to Alpine, but those two weren't particularly difficult to guess.
Yeah. So 2 of them are Jack Doohan and Franco Colapinto. Yes. Who else? Ian, any ideas?
Just trying to go through the driver lineups, and it's going to be a big name.
It's Nico Hulkenberg. That's my guess.
Ian, do you have a different guess?
I don't think it is Nico. Nico has made the top 3, I'm sure. Top 10. Q3.
Has he? Maybe.
I'm thinking it might be Carlos. Don't know why, but...
No, he has.
Well, okay, I will put you out of your misery, because it is Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg has not made a single Q3 this season, but actually, Nico also has the most Q1 exits this year at 10. So 10 of the 14 races, he has failed to escape Q1. I think that's quite interesting, given that, you think of, he's kind of been the veteran of that team, the leader for at least part of the season, but Gabriel Bortoleto has actually got a significantly better qualifying record. So I think that's very interesting.
And Nico was so good over one lap last year.
Exactly.
With Haas. Like, that's,
exactly.
Yeah, a real departure. But yeah, 8-6 in the head-to-head.
Yeah, so I
in
thought
Bortoleto favour.
I thought it was a very nice...
Sam's building up nicely for the big fat quiz at the year, the end of the season, when he knows I absolutely trounced him last year, but I'm not doing very well on
beat me by a point.
It is already been planned as we speak.
Though.
It takes 6 months of preparation to put that together. It is the episode of the year. So, folks, if you're still with us come the final episode of 2025, it will be the big fat quiz of the year. So please bear with us. It will be one not to miss. Anyways, moving on. And Sam, what has been your biggest takeaway of the season so far?
Biggest takeaway of the season so far?
That is what I said.
That despite how poor the RB21 is in comparisons to Red Bulls of yesteryear, Max Verstappen is still by far and away the strongest driver in F1.
Straight to the point. Ian.
I was waiting for Sam to elaborate on that a little bit, but clearly he's
I
just
don't think I need to.
I think unlike Sam.
Max speaks for himself.
Wow, straight to the point. Ian.
I was hoping for a bit more time to think about mine, but Sam's not giving me that time.
Do you want me to do? Should I do mine then?
You go for yours.
Okay, I'll go for mine. And my biggest takeaway of the year has been the fact that what we expected to happen this year in this titanic fight between 3-4 teams just hasn't materialized. McLaren has been from the get-go the class of the field. We spent so many episodes last year speaking about how 2025 could be one of the F1 seasons of all time, with potentially McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes all being in the mix, and it just hasn't been the case. So for me, that's
299 point gap,
which is mental when you really think about it.
They're on course to set all kinds of records. They could break the 1,000 point barrier. Okay, it's 24 Grand Prix, but even so,
mental to even think about that. So that's my biggest takeaway. Ian.
Okay, so you two have gone slightly different. I'm going to say that my biggest takeaway is, in all honesty, I was expecting far more from Lewis than we've seen. I really thought the change of scene, change of environment, even though it's always difficult to get up to speed at a new team, I really thought that would do something for him, bearing in mind when you heard him often last season just bemoaning his struggles at Mercedes, and all of a sudden now he's, particularly after what occurred in Hungary, it's like, Wow, actually, not much has changed, has it, Lewis? Yeah, we're still the same downbeat kind of Lewis talking about I'm useless, Ferrari needs a dream driver, there's going to be tears over the summer. Oh, mate, do you need a big, big second half? And I'm using the word half in inverted commas because we've already gone past the halfway
Very
point.
good.
Do you need a good second half of the season?
Well, I think those three very good biggest takeaways. Anyway, let's move on and let's start off by looking at the top of the championship. And where else can we start than the fights between McLaren? McLaren have basically sealed the constructors' title already. There's nothing really to speak about on that front, but
Can do it
plenty
as
to talk
early as
about,
Azerbaijan.
which is incredible. So we can obviously
Mental.
talk a lot though about the drivers' title fight because of course only 9 points separate Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Lando of course had the lead from the get-go initially in Australia, but it's really been Oscar just about in control ever since. Ian, I'll come to you first. What have your thoughts been on this title fight between Lando and Oscar so far this year?
Give you an interesting little fact to start off. I think it's something I
Ooh.
pointed out to you yesterday, didn't I? And I'm going to give credit to Jake, but obviously anybody who actually does think about it for a second. If Lando hadn't have gone into the back of Oscar in the Canadian Grand Prix and obviously retired at that point, and they'd held station at 4th and 5th place because that was the position they were fighting over, was 4th, Oscar was 4th, Lando was 5th when they had the collision. They'd have held station at 4th and 5th. Lando would be 1 point ahead at this stage. Instead, the gap is 9. You've got to hope, for Lando's sake, come the end of the season, that if that gap is anything less than 9 points, he's going to be absolutely berating and kicking himself come the end of the season, because that could ultimately, the way these two guys are going, prove to be the, if not one of the defining moments of this title fight between them. So I've loved it so far. As I say, there's been moments where it's been a bit meh. I loved the Hungarian Grand Prix. You guys know I raved about it from a tactical perspective. I thought it was absolutely fascinating, that tremendous build up towards the end where Oscar on so much fresher tyres but couldn't get past Lando. Lando did a great defensive job on tyres that were 40 laps old, I think it was, or something like that. And I just think we've got two very different characters as well. Two real, what's the best phrase I'm for? Yeah, just to elaborate on that a little bit, two very different characters in terms of we've got the more methodical, cooler, calmer, more calculated driver you would suspect in Oscar. And then we've got the slightly more gung-ho, hot on his sleeve, no quarter given, berates himself for his mistakes, Lando Norris. Whereas Oscar, you wouldn't hear the kind of comments come out of his mouth that we've heard from Lando Norris on occasion over the past, not just this season, but in past seasons as well. So I think at least we've got this different dynamic within McLaren. As to how it's going to end up, yeah, only time will tell. Ain't it, Goldie?
There is a cap coming soon, potentially. I'm not going to give too much away. Interesting that I asked you both in last week's episode. If you've not checked that out, go and do so. I asked you both, obviously, who you think is going to win the title. I said Oscar. Ian, you said Oscar. Sam, you said Lando.
I edged it. Yeah, just
edged it. Sam, you're the only one of us who said Lando. So This is your time to shine. Take it away. Why?
Well, to borrow Oscar's own words, because he was asked pretty much specifically this question of, will it come down to speed or will it come down to minimizing mistakes? And you can quite crudely divide them into two camps. Lando probably has the edge on speed, which is my kind of rationale for why he'll win the title over Oscar, and Oscar minimizes mistakes. He just doesn't make the same errors that Lando does. So it kind of comes down to that. And whilst Oscar did say you need both, absolutely, he did in his answer lean towards minimizing mistakes doesn't matter if you're consistently second. You need that speed. You need that pace. So that is the kind of nexus of why I think Lando will win it. I think he will just edge it over the course of the year because he's a little bit quicker. And it's interesting in pointing out the Canada moment, because that was a sliding doors moment for Lando, or it could well be. And these title fights always come down to something like that. And I felt very much that in Hungary, Lando's defense was, again, one of those moments where you can kind of go, like, he's really sussed this. Like, we saw it in Austria, he was able to absorb and soak up that pressure from Oscar. What Lando needs to be able to do now is win from behind. We haven't really seen him do that in the same way that we have with Oscar. So that's what Lando's got to kind of figure out whilst minimizing those mistakes. If he can, that's why I think he'll edge it. But yeah, it's a title fight that's maybe lacks a little bit of that kind of spice to it. But I think there is a lot of intrigue because of the reasons Ian points out, that they are two very, very different characters with two very different approaches.
See, I believe,
sorry, Nick, just briefly, because I just wanted to draw on the lack of spice that Sam was on about there, because I read some of the comments below our podcast post Hungary, and quite a few people actually were referring to the fact that I myself, and Sam had touched on it a little bit, had referred to the fact that there was a little bit of like a needle between these two guys, and you kind of felt there was just needed to go head to head a little bit more. And actually people were commenting actually that they liked what they were seeing on track between these two guys, that they were keeping it very respectful. And that's, do you know what? That's absolutely fine. Right? All credit to them for doing that and for clearly adopting the McLaren racing way of, this is it, guys. You cannot crash into one another under any circumstances. Yes, mistakes like Lando's in Canada can be forgiven to a certain extent, but if you are going wheel to wheel and you both end up off the track, like we've seen with Senna Prost, like we've seen with Hamilton, Rosberg in the past, Weather Vettel, those kind of incidents, that is what McLaren will not tolerate. So these two guys keeping it very respectful, very gentlemanly at the moment.
One thing just to add in, actually, Ian mentioning Webber Vettel has reminded me of this, is that with 2010, Webber obviously came perilously close to winning that championship for Red Bull, would have been the first Red Bull world champion. You almost get the same kind of sense, almost the same dynamic now with Oscar and Lando. I feel very much that if Oscar doesn't win this championship, he will have more opportunities down the line. With Lando, even though I think he's the quicker driver at the moment, he edges it. I think the general consensus is there's this feeling that this is Lando's shot, that he has to make good this year before the regulation change, before Oscar continues to grow stronger. And that could potentially mean Lando has more pressure on him than Oscar.
So you see Lando in the Mark Webber role and Oscar in the Seb Vettel role. Interesting.
I think we've touched on this in the past, how interesting that kind of mirroring is, given that it is Mark who manages Oscar, and how people have called for Lando to have an equivalent kind of Seb Vettel-esque character in his corner.
Interesting. See, I'm pretty confident that needle is going to come. As you know, in the next 4 to 5 races, maximum McLaren are going to seal that constructors title. That's going to be done and dusted. It already is, but it'll then be officially done. Nothing to worry about. Yeah. Two drivers fighting for their first world title in arguably one of the best cars F1 has probably ever seen. You know, it looks like it's going to be a record-breaking year for McLaren. I just don't see how that needle doesn't come. But for me, I do believe that Oscar still has more levels to come from him. Lando, for me, still makes too many mistakes. When you look at the qualifying stats in particular, Oscar has the best average qualifying result. It's like 2.14 or something ridiculous. Lando's is about 3.2 or something, only narrowly better than Max Verstappen. So Lando still has that inconsistency. Whereas Oscar, for me, is just, if he's not winning the race, he's second. It just seems to be that I just think there's more to him. And it will come down to, I think, one mistake either way. But for me, Oscar just seems more measured. And what I think is interesting is, a lot of people have complained at Oscar on social media following the massive lockup in Austria and at Hungary, say, he could have taken out Lando, but he didn't. And for me, that's a crucial thing, is that he locked up. And for me, that was, he knows where his car is. He knows, where Lando was. He knows how far beyond the limit he can go. And ultimately, he didn't make contact. Lando in Canada went for a gap that just quite simply was never there. And for me, that's going to be, that just shows, to me, just the level of Oscar. So yeah, Oscar for me. Ian, very briefly, why do you think Oscar wins the title?
Pretty much as I espoused with regard to the different characters, I just think the cooler, calmer, cleaner, crisper, lots of C words there, Oscar Piastri, for me, that's why he just has that edge. I just think when it comes down to it, and I think when it's really going to build to the high pressure stakes right at the end of the season, if these two guys are locked in this battle all the way through to Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi, the final 3 races, and the gap is really minimal as we see it now, I just think Oscar would just have the edge psychologically, mentally over Lando. I just think he will be able to just keep his emotions under control that little bit more and keep his pressure in check that little bit better than Lando. I just think Lando might succumb a little bit to that when it really comes down to the crux at the back end of the season.
Only time will tell. Moving on to Red Bull, and remarkably, Max Verstappen obviously has dominated F1 since he won the title in 2021, became a 4-time world champion following 3 successful title defenses. Not going to happen this year unless something remarkable happens. Helmut Marko has said it's clearly impossible for Max to win a 5th consecutive title. Sam, what do you think Max is going to make of not being in that title fight really for the first time since 2020? It's a new experience for him, really, after so many years being in that spotlight as the number 1 driver in Formula One.
I think in many ways he'll relish it. It's a chance to do something a little bit different, experience something slightly new for him over the back end of the season. And he's been very kind of matter of fact about this situation. He is, talked about how success comes and goes, and doesn't seem particularly fazed by his increasing kind of lack of involvement in that title dynamic. And in some ways, I think he's still got a lot that he will be interested in proving, and a lot that will keep him invested in that drivers' championship fight, as well as, or at least the race wins and kind of results, as well as the constructors' standings and how important that is for Red Bull from a financial point of view. Because Max, and to kind of build on my initial point of my biggest takeaway, I think there is an opportunity for Max, and something that he will a point that he will want to prove is that, look, you McLaren boys, you can run away with this title fight, you can have this one, but I'm still the man around here, and I'm going to prove that. And you get that sense from him at points, and you have them throughout the year. Take the Japanese Grand Prix when he won in an inferior car, put together a brilliant weekend, superb qualifying lap, absorbed the pressure from the 2 McLaren guys behind for basically the whole 50 whatever laps of the race. And then he turns around and goes, well, if I wasn't at McLaren, I'd have been in Tokyo by now. Like, there is something for him, a point for him to prove over the next half a season. So that is what he will be looking to do over those 5 or 10 rounds, and get ready for 2026, when he can psychologically go again, yeah, I didn't win the title, but I am still the best driver in this paddock.
We have seen, though, a Red Bull camp this season, Ian, that has unravelled. Obviously, very quickly it became clear that Red Bull wouldn't be fighting for the Constructors' title. Max obviously now very much out of contention of the Drivers' title. We saw a driver change after 2 races, Liam Lawson being demoted back to Racing Bulls, Yuki Tsunoda getting a promotion and then going on to struggle. He's on the worst pointless streak, I think, of any Red Bull driver in history. He's had one of the worst qualifying runs as well. 4 Q1 exits in the last 8 races. Oh, and we also had Christian Horner being axed and Laura Mecki's being demoted. There has been so much going on for you, though, and obviously your presence in the paddock. When did it feel in the paddock like things were starting to unravel at Red Bull? Was it even this season? Was it last year?
Bahrain testing last year, February. When all the Horner stuff started to emerge. If you think about it, they'd just come off the back of what Christian Horner had described as the unicorn year of 2023, 21 or 22 Grand Prix victories, Max winning 19 of those, just the most staggering performance from driver and car, and of course the team overall. And then you just had this bombshell that just came absolutely out of nowhere. We had Jos Verstappen's volatile in many respects reaction to that, saying that it was going to rock the foundations of Red Bull, Horner needed to go, etc. It never happened. Christian went through the 2 internal investigations for following complaints by a female Red Bull employee of inappropriate behaviour, and he was cleared on both occasions, but nevertheless, it was all still rumbling in the background. You had Adrian Newey leave, you had Jonathan Wheatley leave. There's been other high-profile senior figures that have also gone over that period of time. And of course, despite Max winning 7 of the first 10 Grand Prix of last season, you had all these comments coming from behind the scenes about how the car just wasn't right, wasn't performing. It would even date it back towards the back end of 23 and certainly going into the start of 2024 that something just was quite a little bit amiss with the car, and it just snowballed and snowballed. And then, of course, we had Max hanging on, Lando thereabouts, really not being able to make that full-on title challenge as we thought might materialize. But nevertheless, it, as I say, it was all just starting to go to pot behind the scenes at Red Bull, both team dynamic wise, car wise, Max unhappy wise, all the rumours about Max's contract. Could he leave? Similarly again this season. And then obviously this car not performing to any great level other than Max just doing what Max does and pull out performances from a car that really not virtually hardly any other driver in the world could do. And yeah, it's and then obviously we've had Christian go, and we still don't have any official reason from Red Bull as to why. Been alluded to that it's been a little bit of everything, but primarily it's been the fact that performance-wise, Christian hasn't been able to get the best out of the team around him, and consequently that's led to this poor RB21 this season. Will we ever hear the real reason as to why the parent company of Red Bull decided to get rid of him at such extremely short notice, just saying, that's it, you're gone, just 3 days after the British Grand Prix? Quite staggering. But yeah, it's, for me, yeah, this has been an 18-month saga, effectively, going all the way back to February of 2024.
And it does at least, of course, have Max committed for 2026. So that's an initial major boost for the team, for Laurent Mekies, of course, as he tries to, stabilize the Red Bull ship ultimately. But what's fascinating is, I guess, the big talking point surrounding Max this year has been, will he stay with Red Bull? Will he go? We now know he's going to stay. Was there talks with Mercedes? Was there not talks with Mercedes? This was the question we were asking ourselves for a good amount of time, until George Russell in Austria on media day, if I remember correctly, came out and confirmed that, yeah, that there's been talks. It's kind of delaying my own talks with the team, actually. Of course, we know everything that's happened now. It was very interesting reading quotes from Toto Wolff to Gazzetta dello Sport, pointing out that, George always knew there was a 90% chance we were going to renew him, but he had to talk to Max. He made that very clear. It's fascinating that George has now said himself it's a matter of when, not if, he signed a new Mercedes deal. Everything looks like it's going to be George and Kimi, at least for 2026. But that whole thing, Sam, this year around, that particularly Russell's Mercedes seat, will he keep it? Will it go to Max? It's been quite a fascinating development so far this season, I think.
It has been, and what has made it even more so is just how well George has been performing.
Yeah.
It's almost the Carlos Sainz situation, but to an nth degree. He is at the absolute best he has been throughout his F1 career, and he's always been a strong driver. He's always been one of those drivers who you kind of go, like, he's always had race winning potential. You look at him, you're probably saying he has championship winning potential and has done since his Williams days. So that is what makes that so intriguing, is it's not just a case of, and we've got a cat here who's just joined me on the desk, so I'm just going to move her very quickly. See you later, Millie. Sorry about that. But for George to have to then deal with that noise around him, in some ways I think a lot of people would crumble and they would kind of go, what more can I possibly do? And George was very kind of, glass half, full, and was like, well, what more can I do? And he saw that as a positive, and he said, I'm doing everything that is within my control. The chips will fall as they may. I just need to continue to do what I can do. And so that's what's been really intriguing, is that it felt like he was the one who was going to be the casualty over, Kimi, and, over that situation, because Kimi is, let's face it, the Max Verstappen antidote for Toto Wolff, because he missed out on Max a decade ago. So that was never going to happen. So yeah, it is an intriguing situation, but I think it's the right thing for Mercedes. I think it's the right decision for now. And it gives George the opportunity to further stake his claim next year in what could potentially be a championship winning car, or one certainly capable of it.
We've got two more talking points, but we have a very fun ending for the final 5-10 minutes. But on the flip side of George Russell having actually a really good season, as you touched on your biggest takeaway, Ian, it's been a bit of a nightmare for Lewis Hamilton, to say the least. And actually Ferrari in general, we expected so much from them. The kind of belief was they could be the team to take the fight to McLaren. It's been anything but. Of course, they are second in the constructors standings, should I say, but 299 points adrift. But it's a fascinating situation that Ferrari have, because of course, yes, you've got Lewis Hamilton, who quite clearly is still struggling to adjust to being a Ferrari driver, and the way the car behaves, the way the team works as well. So we've had the things already with the race engineer this year. We spoke about that last week. But also on the other side of the garage, you've got Charles Leclerc, who actually is having, I think, a pretty good year. 5 podiums, the same number as Max Verstappen, but has also been, compared to recent seasons, very, very vocal, very critical over the radio. We heard that in Hungary, of course. He then took it back, but nevertheless, he still said it. Still, that emotion came out. Of the top 4 teams, is Ferrari the one that needs the biggest reset, given that there's clearly a bit of, it kind of comes across that both Charles and Lewis actually, maybe in different ways, kind of sound a bit unsettled, really, with everything going on at the moment in Ferrari. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't get that impression. I think it's just actually funny enough. I was writing a Ferrari story this morning, and it's a little bit one around Charles Leclerc, and this is his 7th season now, and he's had 8 Grand Prix victories in that time, just 8 in pretty much 6.5 years, all told. He had an opportunity in 22 when he made a really good start that year.
Yeah.
But just completely fizzled away. Max eventually went on to win his second title that year. And last year we thought, as we pointed out, Ferrari was going to come strong at the start of this season. Only finished within 14 points of McLaren at the end of last season in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari missing out on what would have been its first Constructors' title since 2008. And we thought, when we said it at the start, I remember us clear as day now in some of the podcasts that we did at the start of the year, absolutely talking up Ferrari and saying, yeah, this is going to be a really good fight. Lewis is on board. He's going to, revitalize the team, reinvigorate the team. And at the end of the day, other than that sprint victory in China from Lewis, where we thought, well, hey, this is it, platform, springboard now, going to go from here. No, just not happened. Oh dear. What a major disappointment Ferrari and Lewis have been, all told. I get Lewis's excuses, of course I do. After so many years at Mercedes and what he'd become accustomed to there, to then go to Ferrari and find all these completely different processes, ways of working. Naturally, that's going to represent a major challenge for any driver to get their head around and get on top of, and try and then obviously get the best out of the car that's beneath them. And this generation of car has never been one Lewis has become accustomed to. He's never liked it. We know that. There was a potential feeling that Ferrari might just give him something different. It hasn't. And now we have these comments from Lewis post-Hungarian Grand Prix, as we've discussed. And it's just like, you've got to get your head back in the game. I mean, even comments from Bernie Ecclestone, former F1 Supremo, turning around in an interview with a national newspaper in the UK and just telling him, time to retire, Lewis. It's if I was your manager, I'd be going to Ferrari and saying, look, if you've got somebody else there, Lewis is willing to step aside for you, just pay him off and he will go. you've done your best, you've given your all. Time now to hang it all up and just retire and enjoy what you've got left and do other things, do something different. I disagree with Bernie. Guys. My belief is give Lewis 2026 with that new generation of car, and then let's see if he still has it or not. Up until that point, I'm willing to give Lewis the benefit of the doubt. But for now, it's been a real tough ask for him and for Ferrari. But overall, just very quickly to conclude, Charles, Lewis and Fred are a very, very tight-knit unit, and they are the glue that's kind of holding Ferrari together at the moment. I do think that will pay dividends overall somewhere down the line.
We will see over the remaining 42.66 recurring percent of the season. I have done the maths. We've done 58. We've done 58.33% recurring of the season.
Just
so,
don't
anyways,
put that in the headline. It's not going to work.
No, I will not. It's not going to work. And of course, for those who are watching this podcast on YouTube, be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below on anything we've discussed. Still got a few things to go over, but our final big talking point before a very fun end and a fast and rapid end to the podcast, Sam. We've already discussed, of course, the Red Bull driver change that happened after 2 races. There was, of course, another driver change in the first 14 rounds of the season. At Alpine, Jack Doohan was given the, demotion back to reserve ahead of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Franco Colapinto was brought back, not brought back, put into the seat, having driven for Williams after replacing Logan Sargent last season. And it's fair to say the change hasn't gone very well. And just to obviously, if it hadn't gone badly, last week's Pirelli tyre test at the Hungaroring just kind of put everything into an even darker light, because Franco had, from the looks of it, an almighty crash at turn 11, a really high-speed right-hand corner, one of the fastest corners at the Hungaroring. Pirelli quickly said it wasn't due to them. It wasn't due to the 2026 tyres that were being tested. Franco was taken to medical centre for assessment, what was quickly cleared as being okay, but the pictures that came out showed a really heavy shunt quite clearly. It's not gone well, this driver change, and the question remains now, going into the final 10 races, and obviously the Dutch Grand Prix in a few weeks. What do Alpine do? Do you keep Franco in the car? Do you put Jack Doohan back in? Or do you go somewhere else?
I think Alpine will ultimately stick with Franco, and I think it will be a commercial decision. I think it's very easy for Alpine to rationalise that and look at this season and go, look, we've got 10 races left of this generation of car. We've got 10 races left as a works team. There's no point making this change now. Jack was brutally done by, but the writing was on the wall as soon as Franco was brought into that team. You kind of got the feeling that it would have taken Jack to be scoring points to have allayed those concerns and had basically forced Flavio's hand or forced him not to play his hand. And even though Franco has been no upgrade on Jack, the commercial element of it, the fact that Flavio wanted to make that call, I just don't see them making that change. Whether or not that's the right thing to do, I think everyone will have their opinions on. It would be nice to see Jack given a second opportunity at a seat that, let's face it, wasn't initially his. But I don't see realistically, in the grand scheme of things for Alpine, where the upside is there. I think they've already kind of severed that relationship, albeit he is still the reserve driver. And you're looking at these. You're looking at the talents that are coming through. Is Paul Aaron an upgrade on Franco? You'd only know by making that change, and he hasn't shown anything particularly more than Franco or Jack did through their junior careers. And for Franco, unfortunately, he was able to extract that pace from the Williams, but the mistakes we are seeing now from him were still there last year. Franco is quick. He's a talented driver, but to get the best out of himself, he has to be, I feel, has to be more on the limit than other drivers do in order to be at the pace he needs to be at. And that's then where you're seeing him then, crossing over and making those mistakes. And I don't see how that changes. If it's the car, then he just hasn't gelled with it. And yeah, there's reports of some of the retirements. There's, kind of some certainly kind of shady circumstances around how that happened and whether or not we're getting the truth around Alpine and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a very difficult situation, but I think they just go on as they have been, make a change over winter, head into 2026 with hopefully a competitive chassis, likely a competitive power unit, and a Pierre Gasly who is very, very capable of performing in that team, in that environment, and has done for much of the year, regardless of how difficult a weekend he had in Hungary.
Pierre Gasly, who believes he can win the World Championship next season with the right car. It's worth thinking.
Don't rule it out.
I'm not ruling it out when we
Mercedes
think
power
about
unit
that.
in the back of that car, you never know.
Exactly.
Who knows? Only time will tell. Well, hey, right.
Hey.
I have sad news. There is no bold predictions this week because, well, there is no race this week. However, good news. We are going to end with some quick fire questions looking back at the first 14 rounds of the season. Very, very sharp, very, very quick. So, first
That'll be
things
the first
first.
half of the season, wouldn't it, Nick?
It will first. 58.33% recurring. Anyways, first one. And Sam, biggest surprise of the year so far?
Well, there's twofold. It's Liam being demoted after 2 rounds, and it's Christian being fired.
Okay, that was 2.
Yeah.
Mine is George Russell being the person who revealed that Max was talking to Mercedes or Mercedes was talking to Max. I just thought that was hilarious. Ian, biggest surprise?
Christian's exit got to be, because even though I talked about it earlier in that 18-month build-up, no one still saw that one coming. So that's absolutely number one.
Okay, best moment. I'm going to say Nico Hülkenberg's podium. That was a pretty awesome one to see, and even more special, the fact that the following week we had Audi F1 consultant Alain McNish on the podcast, and the stuff he said about it was just really cool to hear, and the timing could not have been any better. So, I mean, hats off to you for arranging that, Ian. But yeah, for me, Hülkenberg podium is my best moment of the year so far. Ian, for you?
I can't top that, mate. Absolutely. Given everything that Nico has gone throughout his career, the times when it looked like on occasion it was over, and to still come back and do that. We talked about his horrific qualifying performances this year, but earlier in this episode. But yeah, great moment for him, and it was a real pleasure to be there and see that.
Sam?
Yeah, totally concur. There's every year, sometimes even less frequently, you get something that happens that brings the entire paddock together. That was this moment this year. Yeah, I don't think I haven't spoken to anyone who was unhappy with that result.
Okay, then on the flip side, worst moment of the year so far. Ian, for you?
For me, we've already touched on it, and I just thought Red Bull's decision to axe Liam Lawson after 2 Grand Prix was absolutely appalling. To not give that kid a chance, to just embed himself into the team a little bit more, to go after 2 races, shocking. One of the worst decisions I've seen in Formula One for quite some time.
Okay, Sam?
Nick, you go first, because I've got 2 again.
Mine's weirdly, it's the worst moment, but at the same time, it's also a best moment. For me, Yuki Tsunoda's ridiculous qualifying crash at Imola, where obviously his car barrel rolled along the wall. The worst moment, just the fact that to see that kind of crash happen was just, mind blowing. But on the flip side, it was one of the best moments. In fact, he actually walked away from it okay. And again, it highlighted how far F1 safety has come, because that was one of the biggest crashes I think we've seen in recent seasons, maybe the biggest since Zhou Guanyu, of course, flipped over the barrier at Silverstone. It was absolutely huge crash, and for me, it's one of those moments where your heart does stop and you think, "Oh my, what have I just seen?" So for me, that was the worst moment. Sam?
So I've got 2, because worst can be very different. So in
It's
terms of
always
sorry,
But
in terms of
do something different, hasn't it? Jeez, come on.
In terms of what on earth were you thinking? It was Max in Spain with George. What on earth was going through his head? Well, he wasn't thinking, was he? That was just a real dark mark against Max's name, that incident. And then also Isaac Hadjar's Melbourne formation lap crash, in terms of gut wrenching, because everyone felt for
and Anthony Hamilton coming and putting an arm around him and all that.
Yeah. I think that was a class act from Anthony Hamilton, but yeah, it was horrible to see Isaac go through that. But there is always a silver cloud. I think he's bounced back remarkably and potentially because of that. So yeah, that's the kind of gut wrenching worst moment of the season for me.
Linking to that, best rookie for me, Isaac Hadjar. Ian?
Times 2. without a doubt. And as Sam's just pointed out, to bounce back from that, it could have gone completely horribly wrong for him. New kid on the block, just missed out on the F2 title last season as well, and then to go into his debut Grand Prix and not even to get a lap under his belt, for that to happen to him, and then just to really bounce back from that. Yeah, absolutely. For me, he's been a joy as well. To when you sit down with him and talk to him, I think I've loved the moments I've been interviewing with Isaac. That's for sure.
Sam?
I agree. I think at this stage, absolutely. I think Gabby Bortoletto may well push him close by the end of the year, but I think it would be too much recency bias to go Gabriel at this stage. I think Isaac is shading it at this point.
Almost done. Most improved driver in team. For me, in team, Stake F1, we've kind of explained a little bit why in the recent episodes with Bortoletto and Hulk. Most improved driver, I've gone, if we're looking just at this season, Fernando Alonso had a pretty shocking start to the year. I think the worst pointless run of his career, or one of the worst pointless runs, if I remember correctly, but has come strong in recent races and seems to be really finding some form. So for me, a most improved driver from the start to the season to now, Fernando. Sam?
For me, most improved driver, Oscar Piastri.
Okay.
You pointed out earlier in terms of his qualifying was his big kind of weakness last year, and he's now performing better than Lando in qualifying. Partly that is due to the mistakes Lando's making, so it's more so maybe it says more about Lando than does Oscar, but the rate of improvement he has made across his entire arsenal, I think, is more than you could have expected over one winter. So I think, in terms of most improved season to season, Oscar, most improved team, Stake. Yeah, for
Ian?
The obvious.
Yeah, can't really disagree with Stake / Sauber. Really can't wait for that team to be called Audi next season. Just going to make it so much easier.
New title sponsor as well.
Exactly, yeah, indeed. And most improved driver, Oscar's a great shout. I had him in my head. Fernando, another good call. You could even argue, make a point for Pierre Gasly as well, because I think he's had a tremendous season. And he's, we know all about what Pierre is about. Good driver in his own right. But for someone to, like Max at the moment, to over-deliver in a car that really shouldn't be in the positions that it's in, I think I'll give him a little nod, as I say. But for me, Oscar primarily, and I'm going to give, as I say, second nod to Pierre.
Okay, penultimate question, very quickly. Ian, which team and driver are in need of a big final 10 races?
This is so easy. This is Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton absolutely needs a good end to the season to naturally dispel any doubt whatsoever that he might not return for 2026. You've got to do it, Lewis. Come on, pal.
Okay, for me, I'm going McLaren because I think they've got a real challenge on their hands to keep this driver's title under control, because they kind of have done just about so far. Driver, Kimi Antonelli, still yet to score a point in Europe, and it doesn't seem to be improving for him at the moment. So for me, driver in need of a big final 10 is Kimi. Sam?
Kimi did get a point in Hungary, but
scored a point in Hungary.
I think your overarching point does still stand, though. He does need to have a big part second half of the year. I don't think it changes that. But
it changes nothing for me.
For me, it's Lewis, isn't it? He's got to gel with that team, find a way to work with that team, further embed himself for all the things we spoke about in the post-Hungary podcast. And then on the flip side of that, the team, for similar ways, Red Bull need to prove to Max Verstappen that they are the place to be. And they can start by doing that over the final 10 rounds of the season. Lauren Mekies has an opportunity to really show that he is the team principal that Max wants to race for over those 10 rounds, where there isn't as much at stake from a driver's championship perspective. Obviously, those from the constructors' point of view, and we've discussed that, but they can get themselves into a really good position heading into next year, where Max is feeling more stable, he has more faith in the team, so on and so forth, and then that could be critical in getting him to remain, whatever it might be. But basically stay post the kind of the whatever contract clauses are in play next summer.
Got a new nickname for him, Sam Two Answers Coop. I mean, again, he's given us two answers.
Well, no, it's a driver and team. That's
Okay.
And also, Nick answered the.
All right. Let's all calm down. We're almost there, guys. Very importantly,
you've really got me there, you two.
Importantly, apologies to Kimi Antonelli for me incorrectly thinking he didn't score a point in Hungary.
My memory needs
to check. Worry. However, I still think the point stands and that he needs a confidence booster. Final question before we end this episode. And Ian goes on holiday. The driver of the season so far, Sam.
George Russell. The performance has just been exceptional from him, and to channel the noise, as I mentioned earlier, that would usually destabilize a driver in a positive way and just let it be kind of water off a duck's back. I think he's really done himself proud in how he's conducted himself, how he's handled that. He's got a few digs in. You mentioned him, obviously, breaking the news that there were talks between Mercedes and Verstappen. He's shown that kind of little bit of edge that we like from George, the kind of the edge that makes you feel like a Verstappen Russell Mercedes would be blockbuster. He's kept that, but he has also performed incredibly well. So for me, he is driver of the season so far.
For me, Oscar Piastri, championship leader. Nothing more to be said. Ian, bring us home before you quite literally go.
Yes.
Away.
Counting down. At this stage when we are recording this, folks, because obviously this isn't being done on Monday, because I will actually be on a beach somewhere by then, thank God. For me, I've got to go Oscar. I just think, for all the reasons that we previously discussed in this little quickfire round when Oscar's been brought up, and previously, as mentioned earlier in the podcast as well. Yeah, for me, Oscar.
Ian, Sam, awesome stuff as always. This has been our 58.33% recurring F1 special, looking back at the opening 14 rounds of the season. So a bit longer of an episode than usual, so we can get so much in. If you have enjoyed this video and are watching the podcast on YouTube, please be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you're listening on Spotify or any other audio platform, please do jump over to YouTube. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe. That would be amazing. Everyone, have an amazing F1 summer break. From myself, Sam, and Ian. We'll see you soon. See you later.
Thanks as always for watching and listening, folks. Take care.
Thanks for joining us.